centuries. You don't know where you land. It's so dark in mythology. Treasures of history to be found. These legends of time. All the handiworks remain. Only the dream away. Orion,
There was an 18-month gap between seasons 22 and 23. The BBC wanted the show gone for good, but there was such an outcry that it came back. Now, you'd think in that time they'd rearrange things so the show could be a success when it came back. The BBC didn't do that. They clearly didn't want the show at all and had just buckled to public pressure. Over the hiatus, Colin Baker had clearly put on some weight. The Sixth Doctor's costume was slightly redesigned, somehow making it look even more garish, and his hair was longer and blonder. Why? It was the mid-80s. But that's one of the smaller problems here. Producer J&T wanted to move on to other jobs, but was being held in place by the BBC, and head writer Eric Sayward vocally hated Colin Baker as the Doctor, and didn't think much of J&T. Anyway, between them, they decided to jettison the entire originally planned Season 23. The original Season 23 was in pre-production when the hiatus was announced. 3 stories had been scripted, people had been contracted, and were paid off in full. The BBC wanted the show gone so badly they were willing to lose money over it, and they did. We lost a new Ice Warriors story, the return of the Celestial Toymaker, and a story set in Asia with the dubious title of Yellow Fever and How to Cure It, some of whom have been adapted into Big Finish audio stories. The new Season 23 would be the trial of a Time Lord, inspired by the feeling that the show itself was on trial. The show's second season-long arc. The budget was cut, again, the episode count was pretty much halved, and until the end of the show there would only be 4 stories a season. The tone of the show shifted again, with the violence and horror elements being replaced by a much lighter tone in attempts at comedy. It's not a pretty sight, and the obviously reduced budget doesn't help. The first story is The Mysterious Planet. It was Robert Holmes' last completed script for Doctor Who. He died partway through writing the finale for the season. The TARDIS is pulled into a Time Lord space station in a sequence that looks brilliant even today. This is the best bit of model work the show has ever done. Even now it's unsurpassed. It's just a pity they clearly spent half the budget on it. I can imagine fans' excitement seeing this sequence, only to be dashed when we cut to a shittier than usual interior set. The Time Lords are putting the Doctor in trial for interfering with the affairs of other life forms. Something that was done before and far better with the second Doctor. It also didn't take 14 episodes to do, and had a far more realistic ending. Guilt. The trial's not quite so transparent though. There's weirdness and intrigue afoot. The prosecutor is the Valeyard, which the show believes is an actual word, but I've seen no evidence of that. He's played very well by Michael Jaston. The first 3 stories are used as evidence in the trial. The Mysterious Planet is from the Doctor's past, the later ones are from the present and the future. So, what is the mysterious planet of the title? It's called Ravelox, it's remarkably Earth-like, and the Doctor and Peri get embroiled in drama between a primitive tribe of Saxonish warriors, some intergalactic conmen, and a giant robot. Ravelox, as it turns out, is actually Earth, devastated by solar flares and moved across the galaxy for reasons that are not at all ridiculous and or nonsensical. One of the few good things about this is the conmen double act, Glitz and Dibber. They're one of the few parts of vintage Holmes shining through the crap. Well, them and the books. Post-apocalyptic things often have a book or 2 surviving and becoming important to the culture of the survivors. Usually it's the Bible for some reason, but in this it's the Water Babies, Moby Dick, and the UK habitats of the Canadian goose. The first 3 stories this season are presented as being viewed in the trial itself, and as such stuff is edited, censored, commented on, left out, misinterpreted, and some other clever stuff like that. Less cleverly, the Doctor and the Valeyard insult each other through the courtroom sections, and legal jargon flies with reckless abandon. Again, I've seen it before in a better season, better story, and with a better Doctor. The second story is Mind Warp, and it's my favourite of the season. It's the direct sequel to Vengeance on Varos. It's taken from the Doctor's rough present. It's the adventure the Doctor was on when he was summoned by the Time Lords. Summoned via mind control from across the universe and in a different time. It's like they're apologising for the Time Lords' lack of power in the last 15 plus years. It's the planet Thoros Beta, and Syl from Vengeance on Varos is back. His boss, Kiv, has a problem. His brain keeps expanding, so he's paying Dr. Crozier to transplant his brain into a new body that can handle it. Eventually, he just decides to transplant Kiv's mind into Perry's brain. Alas, King Brian Blessed has fallen in love with Perry over the course of 4 episodes and doesn't take this very well.
Protect me! I am your lord and master!
I know I kind of spoiled the ending, but Trial of a Time Lord did that first. This heart-wrenching ending was done away with off-screen at the very end of the season, and I'm still not over it. The official ending is that Brian Blessed rescued and married her. The Doctor, who doesn't think to go check, just takes other people's word for it. So we have no idea what actually happened to Perry. And as per usual, the non-TV media has come up with more than one suggestion. So what really happened with Perry is up in the air. I choose the mind-wiped, body-snatching, violent death ending because it's me. In this we see sections that the Doctor swears didn't happen, such as him teaming up with Syl and being evil. It's pretty obvious that the tapes played for the trial have been tampered with, but we the audience never get to see what really happened. So at best this is confusing, but it's supposed to be, I think. Playing Kiv is Christopher Ryan, who at the time was most famous for playing Mike in The Young Ones, but is now probably most famous for appearing in the new show.
My lord! Magnificent! It's me, Syl! The Lord Kev must not only be present at the meeting with our partner from Posicor, but also able to make sane decisions.
Playing Dr. Crozier is Patrick Reichardt, who you haven't heard of, but he was brilliant as Captain Duff in The High Life.
And what of the Earth Woman's mind?
Gone. Mentally, she no longer exists. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. My name's Captain... I'm afraid I've forgotten my name for the moment, but I'm very easy to recognize. I'm the one sitting at the front in the hat. When the Earth Woman's brain ages, I can transfer the mental energy and consciousness of Lord Kiv into yet another body. He need never die. Well, apology for my temporary amnesia. All passengers on departure from the aircraft will receive a stick of Air Scotia shortbread. Thank you.
Nabil Shaban is still brilliant as Syl, and I still wish he'd come back in the new show, while Brian Blessed is Brian Blessed.
Yakanos!
Ed!
It's time we found Perry.
Of course! I need my queen to grace my moment of triumph!
What more would you expect? Overall, this is probably the hammiest collection of actors the show has ever managed to put in one place. It's quite an achievement. Colin Baker wanted to beat Tom Baker's record and be the Doctor for 8 years at least. In his 2 years, we got Alexei Sayle and Christopher Ryan. Possibly the biggest tragedy of his firing is that we never got to see Rick Mayall, Nigel Planer, or Adrian Edmondson in Doctor Who. Mind Warp has its problems, but it's the best story of the season, bar none. It's fairly dark, has a great cast, and if you ignore the retconned ending, then it's a powerful end for the character of Perry. It's an ending that even Nicola Bryant prefers. Tone-wise, it's surreal. Not in the mind-robber sort of way, where surrealism is built into the story. It's a semi-normal story where every artistic choice is weird. I really wish this story had been done in a different season. The court parts damage the story, and the tampering done just confuses it. In the other stories, the court gimmick is a diversion from the crap. In this one, it's a detriment. Part 3 is Terror of the Vervods, otherwise known as Horror of the Plant Vagina Heads. Their design might be some of the best trolling I've ever seen on national television. It's a human starliner in the future, and the Doctor is travelling with his companion, Mel. Now, this is an idea that Moffat likely wishes he came up with first. The story is from the Doctor's future, so we don't know how he and Mel met. But Mel from After Vervods appears in the final story of the season, which from his perspective is the Doctor's first meeting with her. And because of this being the last Sixth Doctor TV adventure, we never get to see Mel meet the Doctor from her perspective. And when Big Finish decided to show Mel's first meeting with Six from her perspective, they made it a multi-Doctor adventure with 2 Sixth Doctors and 2 Mels, and no one met each other in the right order. Take that, River Song, and out-of-sync temporal storytelling. Anyway, aboard the Starliner are the Vervods, some alien plants that are utterly deadly. The Starliner's heading for Earth, and if a single Vervod escapes, they'll destroy the entire human race. Somehow, humans are on a bunch of planets by this point, so I don't know how that works. Anyway, there's murders on board, and the Doctor has to investigate and do his best to stop the Vervods from making it to Earth. By any means necessary.
Article 7 permits no exceptions. The Doctor has destroyed a complete species. The charge must now be genocide.
Mel is utterly terrible. She's much improved in the Big Finish audios, especially the one where she takes on the Valeyard. Unfortunately, that's far from this. In this, she screams. They even used Bonnie Langford's singing talents to pitch her scream with the ending music sting. And she tries to make the Doctor lose weight. Because it's the 80s! The supporting cast aren't amazingly memorable. It's like they used all that up in the last story. But it does feature Michael Craig as the Commodore of the ship. If you're familiar with my movie reviews, you might recognise him as Thatcher from Turkey Shoot. Barring the trial sections, this is a fairly traditional story. Not quite, but nearly a Base Under Siege type story. It's just fairly generic, except for the design of the Vervods, and the fact that the Doctor commits genocide. But even that's not the first or last time that he'd do that in the classic show.
I never would. Have you got that? I never would.
Unless you're a walking plant that vaguely resembles a sex toy. And there's a few logical problems. This story is used as a reason to add genocide to the Doctor's list of crimes, when the story is from his future. If Time Lords can watch future events, be tried for them, and have access to time travel, then surely their society must be Minority Report on steroids. Plus, if he can watch future stories, then that would mean he can avoid the problems. Just by watching this story unfold, this story which begins as a mystery, he has changed the outcome, and therefore might not commit genocide. Basically, this story is a logical clusterfuck. At least Mind Warp was deliberately weird and confusing. The final story is The Ultimate Foe. It's a 2-parter and it's a bit of a mess. Robert Holmes died after finishing the first draft of the first episode and an outline for the second. Script editor Eric Sayward stepped up to finish the story, but angrily quit the show before the story was produced. He and J&T had argued over the ending of the season, Sayward preferring a dark ending with the Doctor and the villainous Valeyard fighting and ending up in the time vortex. Kind of like a sci-fi Reichenbach Falls, while J&T wanted a happier ending. Sayward refused to allow the script he wrote to be used, so Pip and Jane Baker had to write a new one. And because of legal issues in real life, they weren't even allowed to find out what was in the original script before writing their own. So we have a story where they can't use the ending for legal reasons, and so someone else had to come up with something. Anyway, unlike the other stories of the season, this one's not evidence in the trial. It's the Doctor being sentenced to death and then battling the Valeyard in the Matrix. The same one from The Deadly Assassin. I wasn't going to tell you who the Valeyard is, but then I remembered that the original and unused idea was so much better than what they used. He's a distillation of the Doctor's darker side, somewhere between his 12th and final incarnation. Whatever the hell that means. And he wants the Doctor's remaining regeneration so he can be a real boy or something. Originally, he was a desperate Doctor in his final incarnation, going after his earlier self's regeneration so he could live longer, and paradoxes be damned. Either way, he's a precursor to the Dream Lord in the new show. The Matrix is just as surreal and a low budget as it was in The Deadly Assassin, and there is another surprising appearance, but I won't spoil it for you. The Doctor survives and leaves with Mel, happy and confident that he's going to have a wonderful life. Of course, Colin Baker was fired not long after, and was so pissed off that he rightly refused to even come back for Regeneration Story. But more on that next time. This season isn't good. Sorry, it's even worse than season 22. In order to really get this season, you have to be interested in the trial, and I personally am not. It's been done better before. Even the surreal ending is a rehash of stuff done better in The Deadly Assassin. If you're a completist or a fan of Colin Baker, then check this season out. If you're not, then don't. Colin Baker deserved so much better than he got. If you want to try the best the Sixth Doctor has to offer, then listen to some Big Finish audio adventures, such as The Space Race, where super-intelligent Laika, the dog, starts harvesting Russian organs to enhance other animals, or Jubilee, the inspiration for the Eccleston story Dalek, and Better Than It. I'm not sure why, but in Big Finish, Six has kind of become a stand-in for the other Doctors. He's teamed up several times with Jago and Lightfoot from the talons of Wang Chiang, and even had a brilliant series of adventures with Jamie that ended with Legend of the Cybermen, a brilliantly demented story where the Cybermen attack the land of fiction from the Mind Robber. That one's got a great twist ending. And join me next time when we'll meet the Seventh Doctor, the Rani will return, and we'll meet the last companion of the classic show.
Measure mystery and the sound without taking up time. So the handiworks remain only dream around.
Now I am she, alive within this oh so wonderful, wonderful frame.
Welcome to your new body.
I wish you could have found a more attractive one.